We're ready to go, Jennifer.
Perfect, thank you. Good evening. I'm Jennifer Laursen. I'm president of Friends of Chamber Music of Troy, New York, and with me behind the scenes is Kent Jones, who is assisting to make sure everything runs smoothly. I want to thank you for joining this evening's performance in context with the 6 innovative composer performers of Ensemble Decipher, who you see on the screen as our panelists. If you enjoy this evening's event, please visit our website where you can join the email list, make a donation, see the rest of our events for the year, both performance in context and live performances. Performance in context is just one of the many ways that Friends of Chamber Music seeks to connect audiences with the world of classical music, with the artists who perform it and the composers who produce it, with the musicologists and the ideas and each other. So this is our second season of Performance in Context Talks. I welcome any feedback that you might have, so please don't hesitate to contact us. At any time during the conversation, you may type your questions in the chat box at the bottom, and I will monitor those and try to work them in as they fit into the conversation. And at the end, with about 10 minutes to go, we will give you the opportunity to unmute and turn your cameras on so that you can ask questions in person and we can see you as well. Now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Ensemble Decipher. They were founded in 2017 as an electroacoustic ensemble at Stony Brook University. They're active performers at New Music Festivals, so if you are a new music fan, you may have caught them at Earfest or the New York City Electroacoustic Musical Fest or New Music for Strings. They're recipients of 2 big grants for commissioning projects, and they have commissioned a lot of new works. And I think it's super cool that they are hosts of the podcast Decipher This. I wish I had thought of such a clever name, but I think that's super cool.
Jennifer, I had a text that people cannot see the panelists.
Okay. Can they see the panelists now? Let's see. No. Okay, we will fix this. Okay, participants. Let me look at you. Oh, I see. Okay. Asked to unmute. Chelsea, you need to unmute.
Sure.
All of those are okay. Can you see them when they speak, Karen?
Hi, can you see me now?
Did you start the webinar?
Yes. It is recording. Pause or stop recording. Stop video. More.
So it looks like they can see us when we're speaking.
Okay, that's just fine.
Yes.
That's exactly
awesome.
Right. Okay.
Perfect.
So I can see you, but they can see you when you speak. Okay, that's good. So I'll continue then. So individually, they are talented composers, and they perform most acoustical instruments, all of you, right? I think that's right. So we're going to start with their early influences individually before moving on to their collective work. Let me introduce them each one at a time, and you can raise your hand and speak so they can see you. So this is Chelsea Lowe.
Hello.
And what is your instrument outside of laptop?
So originally I began as a piano performance major, and I also sing as well.
We'll go, who's next on my, Robert Cosgrove, would you?
Hello.
Hello, and what is your instrument?
So I'm a percussionist. That's how I started, yes.
That's super cool. Eric Lemon?
Hello, I'm Eric. Nice to see all the people here. I was a violist.
A violist? Ah.
Yes.
Let's see. Taylor
Hello, I'm Taylor. I'm also a percussionist.
and Nilafar.
Hi, I'm Nilufar, and I'm a pianist.
Goodness. And Joe Bahijian.
Hi, I'm Joey, and I'm a percussionist as well. We have a lot of percussionists.
Percussionist and pianist, and one violist. Okay, let's see. Somebody's asking me a question here. Can you see them when they are speaking? Please, if you're in the audience, would you tell us if you can see them when they're speaking? Now something just changed and we can see them all. Oh, perfect. That's what we wanted. I knew it would be an adventure tonight. So the first question I have for you all, just to the audience, I sent these questions to them, so they may have organized themselves about who's going to answer what, and that's just fine. And I will let them run with the questions. How does one become a composer? Like, what were your early musical experiences? We already know you play instruments. And I especially want you to describe that moment when you discovered or felt that this was your thing, that you were a composer.
Okay, I'll get us started. So for me, I would play around on piano long before I could actually read music. So when I started taking lessons for piano and learning how to actually read what I was already capable of playing, I got really fascinated with notation. And I kind of used my piano lessons as a way to make up my own stuff and write it out and then get my teacher to play it if it was too hard for me. And so I kept going with piano, and I ended up going to a performing arts high school in South Carolina, where it was just really rigorous and I had to practice way more hours than I was used to just to keep up with the repertoire I was given for performances. And I ended up not having time to compose while I was doing piano performance. And that's when I realized, like, oh, wait, I'm doing the wrong thing. Like, composition is the thing that I love the most. And I love playing as well, but composition is kind of first and foremost. So I figured that out junior year of high school.
Were your teachers telling you, giving you hints this way before then, or?
Actually, no. They kind of just allowed me to do my thing, and then my piano performance teacher at this specific school, I think he kind of realized, like, I like learning the repertoire, but not quite as much as I enjoy writing it. And so that was kind of like a self-realization of refocusing my time in music.
Do we have an order predefined, or shall I call on you, Joe?
I'll go next. So I also played for a long time before I started composing. I actually started on piano and then started doing percussion after that. It was probably around like high school. I was into music theory and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to major in college. And I did a summer course that was composer-performer collaboration. So it was the first time I had ever written for a performer that was right there in front of me and was working with me throughout the process. And I found that to be really fun way to create new work. So just from there, I really focused on composing.
So where was that summer course? Was it a camp or?
Yeah, so that was at California State University, Fresno. The Cal State system has like a summer arts program every year. So it was one of their courses was a composer program. And then I ended up going to school there for my undergrad.
That's super cool. But you could do that in high school.
Yep.
See, in my lineup, Eric is next.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, I think that I came to it actually quite late. I was a performance major in college, and I started composing my junior year of college. And I was having, I had kind of always wanted to do it. As a little kid, I would compose little pieces. I started on piano actually, not on viola. But I think that the real shift started happening my senior year, um, and then continued throughout. So I was always kind of configured as a performer and composer, and I would sometimes perform my own works. But then after some time freelancing in the city, I was like, oh, well, I'm feeling much more fulfilled doing this composing thing. And so then I shifted gears entirely. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on composition. I'm going to go do a degree in that. And then I end up being a composer performer again, but now with technology instead of viola. So I think that the practices are informing each other in some way, and that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Robert.
Yeah, so for me, I was classically trained, but I also kind of later on got more into improvisation. And I think improvisation was actually my access point for composition, because there's kind of this realization that I didn't have to play what someone else had given me, but I actually could create something myself. And so that was like a kind of revelation for me in grad school. So even later than everybody else. That yeah, like just having this kind of real-time creation of new music, and I've incorporated a lot of improvisation into my compositions actually. So it's kind of continued on in that way. So yeah.
Taylor?
Yeah, I think I'm the person in the group that is the least like capital C composer. Almost everyone has a PhD in composition in this group, and I do not. Um, they're all laughing at me. So I don't get commissions and write for amazing other ensembles like these star composers. But I will say that being a percussionist, like growing up playing percussion and playing drums, I was always involved in creating music outside of just playing classical music. So when I first started playing percussion, I had no idea really that classical music existed. So I've always been more or equally interested in the creative process, collaborating with other performers, regardless of genre, and making something, thinking about my music making equally as like an artist creating something, even though I'm a performer, not a composer, versus, as Rob was saying, just like getting notes from somebody else and having to perform them exactly correctly. So this is a good setting for me to kind of do both things, I guess, in somewhat equal measure.
And Nilüfer, you founded this group. So, and now you're the last one to answer.
Perfect. Yeah, so as a, I started on piano when I was 9, and composition and writing my own things from the very beginning. I had that, and I would like kind of make my own little songs that I would memorize and be like, I made my own songs and play it for everyone that no one wanted to hear. But I never knew composition is a career option. I always thought it's an occupation of the past. And so, when I decided to be a serious musician, I never knew composition as an option. And so I was very much focused on piano performance. And that's what I did in college. But it was sophomore year for my recital that I was putting together a program. I came upon a composer called Missy Mozzoli, and I played her piano piece with fixed media, and it totally blew my mind away. And knowing that she was a living composer in her 30s in New York City just completely shifted my perspective, and I was just like, I want to be that. and just really seriously got into it, and I could find myself to be more creative, to have more capacity as a creator as opposed to an interpreter.
Mm-hmm. So you guys, at some point, you just described getting introduced to electroacoustic music, right? Through Missy Mozzoli? Or was that all acoustic that you played?
So for that piece that I programmed for my sophomore recital, it was for piano and fixed media, and that was the first time that I was personally kind of exposed to music combining both an acoustic instruments as well as electronics. But personally, for me, it was like later on in grad school that I like really got into computer music and especially live electronics.
Which is a total specialty. Do you have like associates or clubs of others that do this, or? I know actually quite a few, strangely. From my time in Abu Dhabi, NYU Abu Dhabi has a composition program, and one of their composers is really, at least one is really an electroacoustical composer.
Carlo, right?
Yeah, Carlos.
Yeah.
How do you know him, Carlos Geddes? Yeah.
I've been emailing with him because he is running the musical portion of a conference that both Joey and I are taking part in.
Oh man, you'll have to tell him you know me. He'll think I'm everywhere at once. So I hope that you will take some time now to share some samples of your work and to talk a little about it and about your artistic intentions, what you were trying to do with it. And I think it is, Robert, you're the one who's charged with doing this.
So I'll say something quickly about this piece. We're going to play an excerpt of Mari Kamura's Kismet, and this is a piece that she wrote for us that we premiered back in August at the New Music for Strings Festival in Denmark. So we're playing alongside Mari. She's a violinist in addition to being a composer, and she created this motion sensor called Music. And so what we've done in this piece is we put the Music sensor in a dog toy. And then she gives us instructions on how to move. It's a ball, so you can sort of see the sensor inside. She gives us instructions on how to move the ball, and then those movements control the sounds in the electronics. So you'll see us sort of running around, throwing the ball to each other, but we're controlling the sounds by our movements with the ball.
Oh, wow, that is super cool. Super cool. So in some of the works, you're interactive in this way. You have to be dancers and active participants. I, it's very theatrical.
It's great.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time working on movement for this piece.
I bet. And did you take it all the way to the end, or did it extend on beyond that point?
Yeah, there's more to the piece. It gets a little bit wild. We start running around the stage and throwing the ball at each other. So yeah, it like builds to a climax of all the different sounds.
Oh, wow. So are there ideas that continue to be things you want to explore? Like, are there things you've done in your own compositions or performed that you want to do more of?
Yeah, I can say something quickly about that. So something that you saw in that piece where we're actually moving beyond the laptop using external controllers and sensors and things like that is something that we've been really interested over the past couple years. We started off only doing works that were sitting at our laptops in the dark, typing on the keyboard. And we realized that's not the most interesting thing to look at for an entire concert. So we did a piece, one of the first pieces we did that went beyond that was something that I wrote actually, where we put accelerometers and contact microphones on stones, and then we either played those or moved them around, and that controlled the processing of the different samples. We have this piece by Mari. What other stuff have we? Oh, right. We have a piece by our mentor, Meg Shadell, who teaches at Stony Brook, where she has us use machine learning to train boxes, Apple boxes, to know where we're touching them. So if we touch them in one spot, then it plays a certain sound. If we touch it in another spot, it plays a different sound. So different things like that, where we're moving beyond the laptop, using other objects and turning them into instruments is something that we've been really interested in.
So we have something in the chat box that looks interesting here. Oh, were some of the sounds actually generated by the ball itself?
So no, what happens is the ball is controlling a computer program that is next to Nilo. You saw in the video that Nilo picked up the ball at the very beginning, and that laptop there has a program that's built in Max, which is a visual programming language. And when she starts moving it during the different segments of the piece that Mari has composed, it controls different tilting the ball, rolling it, moving it left and right or up and down, will activate the gyroscope or the accelerometer. And it'll allow the computer to listen to these parameters that are getting input into the program, and then the program generates the sound based on those input parameters. So yes, there's a little bit of sound that you could hear if the ball is rolling across the floor or something like that, but that's not the principal thing that that piece is focusing on. Is kind of the materiality of sound, which is something that Rob's very interested in actually.
Do you want to talk a little about that? The materiality of sound.
Sure. Well, I think going along with what everybody else is talking about with, kind of moving beyond the laptop, I think that's kind of what, the materiality of the laptop is. For my piece, I wrote a piece for the ensemble, and it's actually using the laptop as like a percussion instrument almost, because it has a microphone on it, and it has, all these surfaces that we can use to create a bunch of different sounds. And so actually we're using, the laptop as a material that creates all of these different, kind of like a plethora of different sounds. But it's moving beyond kind of, we can just play a sound file on our laptop. We can actually play on our laptop, sort of thing. So that's sort of the material, kind of what we're talking about, material. Should we talk about Yaz's piece maybe too?
Yeah, we had one other sound sample that we wanted to show for this section of the interview. Unless you had any other questions about that piece.
No, but I have a question after this.
Wait. So the other piece that we wanted to show an example of was a piece that we commissioned, I think a year ago now, by a composer named Yaz Lancaster called Holding Space. And this was a piece that we commissioned specifically to be performed telematically. So that means all the performers are in different places and we're performing live over the internet. So this was something that, for us at least, very much came over our experience during the pandemic. It's something that people have been doing for years, but of course a lot more people were doing it for these virtual performances since the lockdown started. So we wanted to commission a piece that we could do at one of our various performances we were doing last year, where like I was in California, some people were in New York, Chelsea was in South Carolina, Eric was in Europe. So we wanted something that would work for that setting. So we had to build in like issues of lag. You can't really coordinate rhythmically exactly, or especially we couldn't at this point in the pandemic. Later in the pandemic, we got a lot better at it with some different programs. But I think for this one, we were using a program called Sonobus to stream our audio to get some better quality. And we're all actually playing either acoustic or electronic instruments in this one. So you hear some guitar and some electronic sounds as well. So I think Rob's going to play an excerpt of this now.
So beautiful and restful as well. So the graphics were done alongside the music, or did they correspond to the music in some way, interactive way, or?
Yeah, so I worked on the visuals for this piece with Yaz, in collaboration with Yaz. And what we did is we had this pattern that you see at the beginning that's moving.
Mhm.
And what happens is every time that there's a little instance of sonic information. So like sort of attack, it will kind of ripple the pattern. And so that's what you're seeing is all these little ripples popping up as we get more and more guitar notes and as different instruments come in. So it was really fun to work on that video. And I think it turned out pretty well.
It did. It's
Yeah.
really beautiful. And I've had a chance to see some of the others as well. The thing that amazes me about your ensemble is how interactive it is, how sort of immersive the experience is, even through a computer screen. And I feel like audiences respond to that. And even acoustical ensembles, purely acoustical ensembles, are striving for that. So I think it's really fascinating, and I can totally see why you're drawn to this form of music for sure. So I wanted to ask a little about how you worked. Oh, here. Oh, thank you. Well, it's absolutely true, and I bet you've heard this from others. That so, how common are laptop ensembles? Are you like one of many? Is it something that certain campuses experiment with, or is it something that's quite novel? Or
Yeah, so laptop ensembles are actually quite novel, and the very first ones is a full laptop orchestra started at Princeton University in early 2000, and then followed Princeton, it was Stanford University, and then gradually at this point I think a lot of big research universities are trying to put together a laptop orchestra for their music programs. But it's still like a very novel thing that not everyone is familiar with. But I also think like what we are doing is now going even a step further than a laptop ensemble, which is what I'm also really proud of us and excited for what we're doing. Yeah.
yeah, I totally see that. It's like you have taken something that you started with and then seen where to go with it to make it more engaging or more effective. And I think that's really great, actually. So how do you choose your repertoire? How do you rehearse together? Do you have I'm thinking of well, recently we had the Escher Quartet, and when they started, they practiced 6 hours a day, every day that they weren't touring. They don't do that now because they all live in different places. What does a work day look like for a laptop ensemble?
Taylor, would you like to answer this one?
Well, sure. It's been a little bit strange because there's this whole pandemic thing. And also we all, as I think maybe Joey mentioned earlier, we all kind of live in different places. Not completely, basically half of us live in New York and then the other half of us don't right now. So we spend every week we meet on Zoom and talk through, logistics, administrative stuff, and we do some rehearsing of initially it was just telematic music, as Joey was talking about earlier, but just other things that we're looking at now. But our rehearsals, I mean, yes, we do spend a lot of time working on music in our rehearsals, but it's also a lot of time, honestly, working on setup of technology. So making sure that everything in terms of computers, speakers, cables, mics, audio interfaces, acoustic instruments, everything is set up so that when the concert is actually happening, we're able to be successful. Because I think that is one of the most challenging things about being a electroacoustic or electronically oriented ensemble is there's so much room for things to go wrong tech-wise in live performance. It can be really stressful. So we do spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we don't have those issues, which they do happen, but we have a pretty good workflow going, I think.
You're getting good at troubleshooting ahead of time, I guess. Yeah. So are all of you programmers too? I mean, how techie are you individually? Some of you are, some of you aren't.
People are shaking their head no, but that's not true. The two people that are shaking their head no write programs in Max, which is a visual programming language, all the time, just fine. So they shouldn't shake their head no.
I think you could probably say that we're all familiar with the syntax of code, and we have to kind of understand how those things work in our computer. We may not understand every single detail of each piece because sometimes it's quite specific, and they're using a particular library that we've never used before or something like that. So we have to be familiar with like the syntax and the language for sure. But yeah, every new piece kind of brings a new challenge. And so that's been like one of the most, frustrating and most rewarding things about being in this type of ensemble is that literally every piece is like, it's like learning a new instrument or learning a new program or, and so that keeps us, our minds going and it's, constantly inspiring, but it also can be kind of the bane of our existence. So
like opening a present that requires assembly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I can totally imagine how that would be. So you have to collaborate with one another and you have to like distribute tasks and so forth. I mean, tell me how that works for you. What have you learned in the process about collaboration in general?
As far as tasks go, it's kind of just fallen into place. Everyone on our team is like very much a team player. And, so for different grants and things, we'll make little subcommittees and be like, okay, you guys handle this. We'll do this one. Taylor's our minutes person, takes notes every time, so we know what to do. We kind of fell into roles and we all have different skill sets. So it's kind of worked itself out where we haven't had to spend too much time like delegating roles, and everybody just kind of takes lead when they see that it needs to happen, and it's worked out so far. So fingers crossed that continues.
It's been a few years, so that's pretty good actually. So I wanted to know what your goals are, like short term and maybe looking out longer term. Are there festivals or recordings or places you want to be? Are you looking to be in residence somewhere as like the teaching ensemble, or are you thinking of founding a festival like Mugfest or something? What are your dreams?
I'm the dreamer. Okay. Hey, Jennifer, all those things sound amazing. I think that we as we've been working together, we've had kind of a clear, dedicated vision of like working on projects that interest ourselves all together, right? So we think we see an opportunity, and we try and move into the space to fill that opportunity. So, coming up in the next year, we've applied for several grants to do some projects that we're really excited about, like commissioning the amazing composer Angelica Negron, and also hopefully working with Bora Yoon. And, if that means that we're going to be looking towards recording an album of works from, like, say, this SUNY Pack Prize pieces. Obviously, we commissioned 10 pieces, so we can't like fit them all on an album. But we could like take the ones that like really fit together in a beautiful, interesting way, and then we could release an album of works that kind of exemplify this project, that this tour that we're currently on. I think that these are kind of ideas that we've been discussing. And I think that, with the pandemic and with the fact that a lot of us have just recently graduated, we're at an inflection point. And that makes it so that like thinking about what we're going to do next is like an open field of like rich opportunity. And I'm love working with these people, and I know that like hopefully we all feel the same way. But I think that I'm sure we do. But I think that like we'll be able to just find a path for the ensemble that really makes sense. Yeah.
So you've had, has this been the lineup the whole time? You've had one member leave at least temporarily. Did you have others? Did you have a few different iterations of this lineup?
Yeah. So when we started in 2017, I think only 3 of the current members were in the group. And then slowly, some people, at that point, we were a student group. So some people graduated and left, new people came. Gradually, we got to this grouping, and I think the most recent one to join was Taylor, which at that point, it was sort of when 3 of us had left the country. So we actually hadn't met Taylor for a year through like having meetings over Zoom, and then we finally met in person, which was really fun. Yeah, so we've been in this current lineup for maybe almost 2 years now, maybe just a little bit less. Yeah.
So was there some point when you thought, these are the folks who make the best team for us? Did you think that, Nilüfer? Like,
Well, I mean, when we started out, I kind of just reached out to my friends. It was like, can we please do this together and play laptop music? I think that would be very exciting. But I wanted to make sure that I open it up to everyone, because I might think, okay, this person might be a good fit to be in this group, but I think it was important for me to open it up to everyone who is interested in it, and then people who were like really disciplined about it just stayed, and then those disciplined people make up the professional group that we are today, I guess.
so it just really worked out. You were through some sort of natural developmental process. So I have an interesting question from a violin professor at UAlbany who asks, in performance, how do you balance the messy, creative, imaginative space needed to make music with the busy brain that computers and technology demand? Does one of these skills take over in performance to the detriment of the other?
I'll answer just for me from the perspective of like being a percussionist, which is that my practice as a percussionist is always like, do I have the right instruments in the right places for my various setups on stage, regardless if it's orchestra or solo chamber music? Do I have the mallets in the right spots? Like, do I have these sticks that I need for this piece? And, so it's, even as a percussionist, I'm very like checklist oriented, setup oriented. And it's not that different in some ways to just kind of apply that same mindset to like playing on the laptop and whatever other sort of instruments or devices we're using. But I'm curious what other people think, because not everybody is a percussionist in the group. So.
Well, I think there's a big conversation around music technology, and that like what kind of comes first, the music or the technology, and that's constantly kind of a balance that we have to strike. But for us, and I think this differs from a lot of other technology groups, is that we kind of place the art first. And whatever technology or skills or people that we need to ask or setups that we need to develop will kind of support that. And so I think that's really important, because I think it is kind of easy to get very into tech, or we have all these skills and this equipment that we have. And so we can say, oh, we can do all this crazy stuff, but that maybe it won't convey effectively to the audience or something like that. So we really have to keep our communication and like the art first, and kind of everything else be in support of that.
Mm-hmm. I that totally resonates with me, because there is computer generated art that doesn't feel so humane, but everything I've seen of your work feels very humane. That it's something that I personally can connect with, and I think others could too. So I wondered whether you do any teaching. do you coach other groups? Do you go someplace and see what others are doing and give comments? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is actually one of our main goals that we want to develop further into the creative outlets of the ensemble to teach, and especially to interact and engage with young adults in high school and middle school, because I think we also want to focus on not requiring virtuosity to play music, and that's something that in a way laptop ensemble or this kind of approach to music kind of allows performers to do. We haven't really had the opportunity to do much of that in the past 2 years because of COVID, but we are working on several projects. We are working to hopefully collaborate with Women Composers Camp in Philadelphia, based in Philadelphia for their summer camp, and work with their composers and do a concert of premieres. But yeah, it's in the making.
Yeah, and that is actually something that we're starting to do now with this SUNY Pack tour that we're on. We actually just arrived in Oswego a couple hours ago, and we're doing a concert tomorrow night, but we're also going to be meeting with some of the students in the music department there, seeing what they're working on, showing them what we're doing to have some more interaction directly with some students who are working on electronic music.
Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure that those of you in the audience know that you can enter questions in the chat, and I'm sure you're curious about things. And at this point, I'm not confident I can unmute and turn on your video since I wasn't expecting to be the host on this one. But do put your questions in the chat box, and we will make sure that they get answered. So I had a question that I've just lost in my head. I want to respond to what you said, Nilüfer, about this being something that doesn't require virtuosity. That I think that's a really important point. That it really makes music making available to everyone. Music making at the cutting edge available to everyone. You know. Is that something that all of you think about too?
Yeah, I think actually Eric would be a very good person to answer this, because he has written etudes specifically to work on this. So I'll just kind of pass it to him.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about materiality of sound, and now we've kind of, so originally we were talking about, we're expanding the laptop ensemble out, and we're investigating forms of performativity and the actual materiality of sound, or the objects that produce sound. Another thing that's really important thinking about music and technology are the social and political components that undergird kind of everything that we are embedded in. And so when we think about access, well, what does access mean, right? Are there access issues that refer to cost barriers? Are there access issues that refer to familiarity with ways of interacting with musical instruments? And so for most of us here, obviously we're all on Zoom. If we have a laptop or we have a computer, we know we have our keyboard and we have our mouse that we're familiar with how to use. And so I've been writing kind of works because I'm very interested in participation in general. And I've been writing works for Ensemble Decipher, but also more generally just investigate participation. It just allows users to interact with musical pieces and musical instruments, software instruments, that only require very simple inputs that people are familiar with. So yesterday and the day before that, we played a piece of mine called Toy 5, which only requires people to play using their delete key, their return key, and their mouse. And that's it. And so just really, really simple. And, obviously like I've written out a score that kind of tells the members of the ensemble what to do so that there's kind of a work. But users in an ideal setting, right, are supposed to be able to go in and they can just turn on the program and they can play around with the sound as much as they want, as like it is described. It's a toy. So this kind of access issue is, I think, also something very important, right? We've talked about education already, is ways of expanding and exposing the ways that technology interacts with our lives. And I think that we've had lots of discussions about this, is that, technology is loaded with political and social aspects, and we need to think about them when we're engaging with them artistically or just in our daily lives. So one way of doing that is through our compositions and through our performance.
Mm-hmm. So that was the piece, you called it Toy. Is that one of your
Toy 5? Yeah, it's just toy_5. Yeah.
Well, I've had a chance to see Toy 3, and I liked that very much.
Great. Yeah, that one is just like a chat box. So if you've ever been in a chat room or in the Zoom chat, you chat and the program reads your chat. Very, very simple. It just actually counts the number of words that you've entered and it generates sound based on that. And it has a nice backing track that kind of carries along the music as well.
Yeah, and the visuals are really nice with that one too.
Yeah, that was created by some scientists in Japan, which is a really awesome collaboration.
Oh, that's cool. So I wanted to ask you if there were particular composers whose works you would like to perform, or particular composers who inform your own composition. Not that we would know any of these.
Well, we can talk about one composer who has really kind of informed our practice as an ensemble, like altogether. And she's a composer called Pauline Oliveiros, and some people may have heard of her. And she's, I think she actually passed away a few years ago, but she has had such an incredible influence on all things electronic music. She was a member of the San Francisco Tape Music Center back in the 70s. And she has kind of like continued to kind of change the way that people listen, they interact with sound, and kind of create new forms of music. And yeah, she has this kind of practice that she had developed, which is called deep listening. And there's actually at RPI, we're talking about Friends of Chamber Music in Troy. At RPI, there's the Deep Listening Institute. And she started that, and now I don't actually know who's running it right now, but it's become this like larger thing that she's created that kind of encourages us to listen differently, to listen to the world around us, and kind of have that inform how we listen to music, and vice versa. Yeah, does anyone else have something I want to add to that? Yeah.
Also, just continuing on Pauline Oliveiros, she really opened up the scene to people who are not professional musicians. So she was also a very big fan of participation. So she has these sonic meditations, scores or directions for flexible duration and flexible number of performers, and anyone who is willing to participate can participate. And they're each one of them gorgeous pieces of music. And again, opening the music making to anyone who wants to take a step ahead and experiment and try something new. I think that's something that we deeply feel and want to follow.
Yeah, and the direct sort of connection between us and her is that Meg Shadell, who's our mentor at Stony Brook, she was her mentor. So it's kind of, she's our grand mentor in some ways. And so that, yeah, we all kind of like received this kind of training of like listening to these things differently. And Meg actually wrote a piece that was based on a piece by Pauline. And that was one of the first pieces that we played as an ensemble. So it kind of was a very formative thing for us. Do we want to talk about composers that we want to work with? I think we mentioned a couple earlier. So Angelica Negron is maybe Eric, you want to talk about her?
Yeah, I know Angelica from a long time. We were in a composers collective a long time ago, starting in 2009. A long time ago, yeah, about 10 years ago. But she's an amazing composer who's been in New York for quite some time. She writes these beautiful electroacoustic works, also beautiful instrumental works. She has her band Balloon. And so she's really, really familiar with all levels of electronics in music and the aesthetics of electronics in music. And as a composer and as an ensemble looking for composers, right? This is kind of the young composer that would make perhaps the most sense for us to work with. I mean, I already mentioned Borayun. She's another one. I mean, are we talking about wishes upon stars, or are we talking about like just like people we have plans? Because like those are the primary ones that we are explicitly looking to work with, and you know, we've talked with them and they're very excited about working with us. We're always very excited to work with composers that we've already worked with because they're so amazing. So I don't know. I have people that I could rattle off, like Pamela Z and Go Wang, but like, you know, there's plenty of other people out there in the world to discuss as well.
So we're coming up on the hour. I want to give people another chance to ask a question if they'd like before we close for the evening. And I did want to hear a little about your podcast.
Sure, I can talk about that. So I don't remember when I had this idea to like start this podcast and interview some of the composers we were working with, probably a little less than a year ago. So I thought it would just be a good way to like get the ideas out there that these composers are thinking of and different ways to use technology. So we started out interviewing composers that we had worked with in the past 3 or 4 years, just asking them anything from how they started to using technology to how they think of using it now. And we've been doing a lot of interviews recently, actually, with the composers that we've commissioned with the SUNY PAC Prize. So our last one with the faculty commission just came out last week, and that was with Jamie Lee Sampson. So it's been really interesting to hear the different experiences of these different SUNY faculty members. We have one coming out next week with Mari Kimura, who wrote one of the pieces that we showed earlier in the interview. But yeah, we just wanted a forum to be able to talk to cool people.
like me. I like a forum to talk to cool people too. I want to thank you all for taking this time to be with us this evening. If anyone wants to learn more about you, they can go to your website. And I noticed that you can get right to the podcast, and you can look at some of these other pieces. And if by chance you're in Albany on Saturday, if you drop me an email, and I put my email in the chat box, I can see if we have a seat for you. The seats are somewhat limited because they're spaced out. So I look forward to seeing you all on Saturday. Have a good night, and thank you so much. And thank you all in the audience for joining us this evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.